Hi, I am Maddie. I was born in a small town, not because my parents were poor, but because my dad doesn't want to spend his money on buying an outsized house or branded cars. He saved money and invested that money into his business to earn more. I was the only kid of my parents. My father died once I was 7 years old. After the death of my father, my mum began to handle the business. My parents bought me everything I asked them to. My dad had a brother whose name was George. Uncle George lived within the next street together with his family. He had 2 kids. They were twins. One was Josh and the other was Alex. Uncle George and his wife love me a lot. Or should I say, they only pretend that they love me. One day, I planned to visit Uncle George's house. I entered the house, and as I reached the TV, I saw Alex sitting on the couch. Alex and I were great friends, so I walked towards him and sat on the couch beside him. "Hey, what are you doing?" He took headphones far away from his ears and he smiled at me. "I'm listening to songs. Do you want to listen to some?" I could not say no to him, so I smiled back and nodded. He gave me one earpiece and I began to concentrate on the music. To be honest, I enjoyed the music. His collection of music was amazing. After some time, Josh appeared and asked me to follow him to his room. I removed the earpiece from my ear and began to follow Josh without even telling Alex. But later, I realized I was rude to Alex and that I hurt him. I felt sad for him. But once I saw Josh, I forgot everything. I followed Josh to his room and he gave me a significant look and said, "I do not like you with him. You ought to stick with me." I replied, "Why should I stick with you?" He didn't say anything, and he just kissed me, and then he hugged me. My heart crammed with joy because it was obvious that he loved me. I was very happy that day, and then we started dating. I began to ignore Alex simply because Josh didn't like our friendship. I was too mean towards Alex. I began to spend most of my time in Uncle George's house with Josh. I was not giving enough time for even my mum. Once I got into a relationship with Josh, I became a completely changed person. After 2 months of our relationship, Josh asked me to travel out with him on a date. Obviously, I said yes, and I was so excited. I won't even lie, it was hard to decide what dress to wear. I asked Mum to assist me, and she picked a dress for me, but she didn't know where I was going. I didn't tell her because she didn't like Uncle George's family. Josh took his car and we visited a beach. I was so happy because it was our first date. Josh knows I like the beach. Anyway, Josh smiled and kissed my forehead. Yeah, of course. There was a table with 2 chairs and it had been decorated very beautifully. It seemed like he spent tons of cash on this date. For a moment, I assumed how Josh could afford it. As I do know, Uncle George isn't an upscale man. He's employed. On the other hand, I decided to not let those thoughts overcome me, so I decided to spend this precious time with Josh. We were talking. After a couple of minutes, a waitress came, and she served the food. The food smell was so amazing. We began to eat the food, and after finishing my dinner, I felt so weak and sleepy. I don't know what happened, but I just fell asleep. When I opened my eyes, I looked around and realized that I was caged in a large locker underwater. I checked myself, but I was still wearing that dress. Also, I had a breathing device. I was so confused and wasn't ready yet to even understand what was happening with me. After a day or so, while I was sleeping in the locker, I heard the locker opening. I saw my mum first of all and took off my breathing device. I began to cry and hugged my mum as we were both crying, and I could see Alex standing and he smiled at me. "I'm glad to know that you're safe." Once I went back home, my mum told me that Uncle George planned to kill us so he could take my dad's property. I was so shocked. Mum said, "Now they're in jail." I asked Mum how long I got trapped underwater. Mum replied, "For 30 hours. I was so surprised. What? I was trapped underwater for 30 hours? Why would they put the breathing device on me if they wanted me to die?" I asked my mum. So she replied, "Alex and I knew everything, and Alex pretended that he was with them. So he put the breathing device on your face and locked the locker, and Josh thought you'd die." I began to feel so bad because of the way I treated Alex. Well, I apologized to him and we became very close.